All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to tonight's Beyond the Nest. I hope everyone had a great day today and hope you're excited tonight to learn some simple signs and learn more about functional communication. You are in for a treat. My name's Abigail Husky. I am a speech language pathologist at our West Loop branch, and I'm joined also by Nicole, another speech therapist out at Wheaton, and Ainsley, an RBT also at Wheaton. So let's get started. Perfect. All right, so a little bit about us, but the goals of the presentation tonight are to define functional communication. So we'll go over what is it, what does it mean, talking a little bit about multimodality communication. So what other communication exists besides just speech. We'll talk about how to support speech and communication with other disciplines besides just your speech therapist. We'll do an introductory knowledge of sign language and some basic signs with some practice, which will be a lot of fun to solidify that new knowledge. And of course, some resources for you to refer to later on.
Okay, so like Abigail said, I am Nicole Gaudiano. I am one of the speech language pathologists at Bluebird Day in Wheaton, and I'm going to be talking with you guys about the foundational component, which is functional communication. So with our first slide, what is exactly functional communication? I'd like to think of it as our foundation. So similar to the idea that you have to walk before you can run, you have to be able to understand that cause and effect in communication in order to have full-on conversations. So this includes understanding, expressing our wants and needs and use of simple messages. We often think of that reciprocity, which includes communicating our wants and needs, and then also understanding that we have to start really simple so we can get our needs met. So we think of like when our babies are infants, right? They cry when they need something, and then we have to guess, are they hungry? Are they tired? And then eventually we use words because it helps us get a specific need met sooner. And then when we use our simple messages, we have to start out like really, really simple, like single words. So for an example, if you want to tell someone, oh, do you want water? It's just easier to start off with, oh, water, to start with communicating what they need. And then the most important part is that we honor the attempt. So what I mean by that is touched on in our next slide, which is total communication. Total communication includes verbal speech, augmentative and alternative communication devices, AAC, and sign language. Total communication is generally any attempt that is made to communicate. And our job as the communication partners is to honor any attempt that was made, all forms of communications, which I included here. And this is really just to support and foster that power of communication. It's the reason why infants will stop crying for like every interaction. It's because we can get our needs met sooner and easier, because even if it's not done correctly, not signed perfect or wrong, or produced incorrectly, we honor it because it's to reinforce the attempt that's made. It's to get that buy-in for communication, right? So for example, like if someone texts you and there's like a typo in it, you're still going to respond, right? Because you know what they're trying to tell you. And I want us to have the same idea here for total communication. Even if it's not done totally 100% correct, you're going to honor it because you know what they want. And that further reinforces that communicative relationship. And then next I wanted to talk about the components of language. So we have receptive language, expressive language, and pragmatic or social language. So I like to think of this as receptive is your understanding of language, expressive is your use, and the pragmatic is the application. So similar to like when you read a book, you understand it. Expressive would be like telling someone about that book. And then the pragmatic or social component is like appropriately referring the book. So you wouldn't refer like a romantic book to someone who likes more like comedy or horror. And then I like to think about the vocab that we also use. So there's core vocabulary and fringe vocabulary. Core vocabulary is more frequently occurring. You can say it and it's more applicable to a variety of situations. So words like up, more, go, want, they're all applied in several contexts. Whereas fringe words are very specific and context dependent. So like for our little ones, it might be like the word chicken nuggets, or for us, it would be coffee, like something that is very dependent on the situation and what's going on. And then the next few slides, I'm going to be just highlighting and introducing the idea of an augmentative and alternative communication device, or AAC device. This basically refers to any other way a person might communicate instead of or in addition to verbal speech, either temporarily or permanently. So this includes gestures, sign language, facial expressions, alphabet or picture boards, and devices in general. The people who would benefit from this are those who might have a difficult time producing verbal speech, or just have a harder time getting more words out in general. But these AAC devices support expressive language development. And there's a large variety of options that are offered for AAC devices that we have, and I'm going to just introduce a few. But what I really like to think about AAC is that you just have more words to use. It's like when you speak multiple languages, you really have a lot more in your inventory to pull from. So it really helps supporting that expressive language or using single words. So our types of AAC devices that we have are no tech, low tech, mid tech, and high tech. And then I'll further break down each category that we have. So the first one we have is our no tech device, or I guess no tech options, because it's not a device. It doesn't require a power source to operate. And I think one of the most common ones is the picture exchange communication system, or the PEC system. Usually whoever is implementing this system is usually trained in it, and it requires several phases, and you start and then you progress down and it gets more complex. The phases that are, I would believe, the most essential to like that expressive language development is beginning between phase 4 and 5, because that's where you begin to generate responses, so like sentence structure and that responsive requesting. But that's like an entire system in itself. And then another no tech option is like a manual communication board. So it just might be like a board of like a piece of paper. You can't see the paper. It's a piece of paper and you like point to it, and it can be like highly personalized for whoever is using. It could have a few words, it could have single letters, it just kind of depends on what's needed. And then next we have our low tech options. This is usually pretty easy to program. It requires a power source, which is why it's considered low tech. And this is for 1 to 2 step communicators or sequencing. This is really to reinforce those beginning messages for cause and effect. Usually it only records a single message. So it could be like more or go or whichever word's recorded. The one I have pictured here on the right-hand side is a Big Mac button, is what it's called. But it usually just records a single message to use. Our next option we have is a mid-tech. This also requires a power source and some training to maintain. This is really great for our beginning communicators who are stepping to that next level of using multiple messages, maybe for more situations that they can use. It's digitized speech, again, limited messages. As you can see here, there's only 25 on this board. Somewhere it's like, hi, bye, wash, help. The one we have on the right-hand side here is a go talk, and you record the messages, or you and your speech therapist, whoever is helping you navigate the progression for AAC. And then our last option here we have is our high-tech devices. This requires a power source and usually pretty extensive training in order to use effectively and in order to maintain the device. We have dedicated options and non-dedicated. You'll be presented usually dedicated just means that the device you have is solely for communication only and nothing else, versus non-dedicated, it might be like an app or something. If you can do anything else on the device, then it is considered non-dedicated. High-tech options are great. They have unlimited messages and different programs, and they can really grow with you. I've included like a few examples on the right-hand side, like Saltillo, could be Dynavox, touch chat, but really the biggest takeaway for AAC is that it's usually a pretty extensive process. So it's really important that you consult your speech therapist to determine the best course of action, as it usually includes a process, and you have to try out all these different kinds of devices, because the thing about AAC is that because there are so many options, there's not going to be a one size fits all. They have to try it to see what works best for them.
All right, friends, we are going to jump into some background about ASL, American Sign Language. Sign language is also considered a form of no tech because we are just using our hands and expressions to communicate what's going on. So before we start signing and learning some fun signs, we're going to do that towards the end. We will just give a little background. So hands have always been used in communication. If you think about it, every day when you're talking to people, maybe your hands are flitting around, you're pointing to someone to show them something, or gesturing, all sorts of things. So it's always been part of communication, but ASL specifically has been slowly developed over time. It actually came about when a neighbor of this man was deaf and he was trying to communicate with her. So there's no official start, but it slowly developed over time, and then formal instruction in universities and deaf schools began in 1817, so over 200 years. This language is completely separate from English. It is labeled like American Sign Language, but that's because each version of sign language is different according to whatever like native language it's representing, if that makes sense. So we have American Sign Language, there'd be another specific sign language for Spanish speakers, so on and so forth. So it's not a one-to-one substitution is part of what I'm trying to say. So every word that you speak in English, you would not then sign that in ASL. So if I say, I want cookies, or like, what's your name? It's not the exact one-for-one translation. There's a different grammar, like different ways to communicate what you're saying besides just words. So we're gonna jump into that too. Before we move on though, some things to note about sign language is the placement of your hands while you're signing is crucial to the message, as well as the specific shapes that your hands are making. The variations in those can sometimes make you say a different word, if that makes sense. But with our kiddos that we work with, sometimes approximations are a-okay. And we'll talk about that too, because fingers and hand shapes are sometimes hard to isolate and perfect. So we take whatever the kiddo is consistently giving us that is close to the traditional sign in ASL. And we'll figure that out on a case-by-case basis with your kiddo, something that you and your SLP and other people that work with your kid see as that consistent sign for them. So I love using sign language with my students at work because it helps with both the expressive and receptive language. For receptive, when I see something and hear something and maybe feel something, I'm getting so much more input and so many more avenues to help me understand what's going on. You may have heard some people are more visual learners or more auditory learners or tactile, right? Hands-on kinds of learners. This is just another way to assist our kiddos in learning the language, as well as helping to express oneself. A lot of times, sometimes if a kid is having a hard time saying something verbally, or maybe they're very dysregulated and it's hard for them to access their communication device, this is another option for them to communicate what's going on. Also, I've had it a lot of times where a kiddo is signing something to me and then verbally out pops the word too. Maybe as a distraction, it's helping them get their message across, or it's really just solidifying or making those connections for them to keep communicating. This is a huge question that we get. What words are we going to start with? We're starting with core. We talked about that with Nicole earlier, but core words make up 80% of our language. So you think about the words that are commonly used, lots of pronouns or verbs or things that can be generalized across. They come up in many different contexts and conversations. So words like this might be go, help, more, want. And we often start here because it allows the child to have a lot of communication in a lot of different areas of their life, in the gym, with their OT, at home with you, at the park, at the store, when they're hungry, so on and so forth. But then we like to add in child-specific words too, because every kiddo has their own interests and their own personality. So child-specific words might be things or activities that they enjoy, like cookie or Elmo or a specific alphabet puzzle. So we'll add those in too, and those are great places to start as well, but they tend to limit a little bit what our children can communicate about. So this is just a list. We'll review these ones later as a refresher, but these are some of the signs you may have seen your child working on at Bluebird. So we have more. I don't know if you can see me in my little box, but we'll stop sharing the screen when we go to practice some of these, so you can see me and my hand placements and we can walk through. But we have more, we have open, go, help. You may have seen your child pat their shoulders. That is the baby sign of help, because the traditional sign of help, which I'll show you in a little bit, it might be a little harder to isolate. We have also taught eat, my turn, and all done. You notice all of those are core words. So your child has been learning a lot of very useful words at Bluebird.
Hi everyone, my name is Ainsley and I'm one of the RBTs or registered behavioral technicians at Wheaton. So one of the things that we do in ABA is that we always try and support speech. And these are a couple of ways that we do it. Ooh. So of course, when we do have our devices or even our no power options, the first things we always want to do is explore and model, and this creates a shared positive experience. We call this, you'll see a lot of this in our notes, which is positive pairing. We want to create a positive learning experience where, you know, they realize where, hey, if they use their words, or if they say, if they do this, or if they do this, they will get some sort of attention. And when it comes to it, it's reinforcement. And when we want to support it is when we see it as soon as possible. It creates not only a shared positive experience, but it creates a safe item. So of course, when we seek our words, it's a form of self-advocacy. It's a form of letting someone know, like, hey, either we have had enough, or trying to communicate our wants and needs from day to day. So getting to know and familiarizing with our communication techniques, whether it's total communication or it's through AAC specifically, that's one way where we can support our speech therapists, as well as their growing knowledge of their own speech and their own language. We primarily have about 3 ways. We do have more ways. You can always consult your BCBA or your speech therapist on the way that your kiddo would learn best. But a lot of the times we are modeling, we're prompting and gesturing. When we model, it's going to be a sort of an imitation. The way that Abby said more like this, we would be like, oh, do you want more? So we would model it back to them as experiences show up. Every single time they want more, it would be like, oh, you want more. The next one is prompting. Prompting is just some sort of cue that will get them to create this outcome that you prefer. So if we are prompting them to do more, oh, you want, it's like getting close to that, that specific gesture or that specific action. When it comes to gesturing, this is where it kind of comes tricky, is where we gesture towards specific elbows or specific cues that will kind of put them in the way towards success. So when we are gesturing for more, it's like, oh, hands, like, what should we do with them? We're going to do more. It's like, again, it's framing that and shaping the way their actions create this outcome that we want them to kind of conduct. So another way that we can explore and model, of course, is my turn and your turn. A lot of the times, especially here at Wheaton, we do have a lot of kiddos that use AAC devices. A good way, especially if when you have one device between you and your kiddo, is saying, my turn. I want to tell you something using your device, but also giving them their space of them showing you it's their turn. There's always, like, if you look at this bottom left-hand picture, a lot of the times there's going to be a my, and then it'll lead to a turn. In regards to modeling, prompting, and gesturing, when it comes to AAC, when it comes to modeling, we would push their own button, like, hey, my turn. When it comes to prompting, we would probably just hover over that specific button and prompt them to create that outcome of pressing the button that says my and then turn. When it comes to gesturing, a lot of the times this is where we want to create space between the kiddo and their device. So we would gesture like, hey, like over there, your device is over there. I see that you're trying to tell me something, but I can't understand quite what you're trying to tell me. And of course, sometimes even with us, we get lost in translation. So when it comes down to it, modeling, prompting, and gesturing often will create, or is some sort of cue that will prompt them to have this desired outcome. 2 ways that we could teach, especially when it comes to sentence structure, is chaining. Again, you can always refer to your BCBA for this. We do it forwards and backwards and total. The 2 that I wanted to highlight today are forwards and backwards. So essentially, it's whether or not you're starting to teach the first word or the last word. If you're starting to teach the first word, in the example of the one to the right where it says, I love mom, the first one you're going to do is you're going to teach I, and then you would put love mom. If we're doing backwards chaining, you would start by teaching the last word. So if I was teaching one of my kiddos how to say I love mom using their device, I would hand-on-hand prompt them to say I love, and then I would either prompt or somehow gesture over to mom. Again, this is just going to be very brief. You can always refer back to your BCBA or your speech therapist on different ways that you could teach your kiddo. Overall, we do want to introduce this functional communication training. And in regards to challenging behaviors, we want to replace those behaviors with something more functional or lead them to the direct communication of probably either a break or all done. So when we are using functional communication training, it's creating meaningful and functional communication in replace of challenging behaviors, especially when our kiddos are trying to learn a new language using their AAC or even through signs. It could be a little bit frustrating, not only for us, as if you've never been encountered with an AAC, it could also be frustrating for them. So requesting for break or all done for activities that would like to be finished. Again, depending on your kiddo, each kiddo is very different when it comes to their tolerance for certain activities, but we also introduce this break protocol. So ultimately, when we see them kind of getting a little flustered or see them possibly like getting a little anxious, maybe they're tapping their foot, maybe their eyes are just wandering, or you can tell by their body language that they're trying to step away from something, we can always say, hey, it looks like you want a break. That's completely reasonable. Even from us, sometimes we have to step away from our own work in order to take a break. It's more functional than creating a tantrum right then and there. So of course, it's okay if you need a break. Tell me you need a break, either break, or you could use the device and say, time to take a break. Especially when our kiddos are all done with their activities, when it's time to clean up or something, you could just say all done. Again, when it comes to these break protocols, 1 more minute, that's completely okay. Sometimes we need 1 more minute to complete what we're doing, to find a space where we can feel safe and move on to the next activity. But one thing to always remember is, yes, you can have 1 more minute, but at some point it's going to have to end. So creating 1 more minute is okay, but just remember to follow through. And again, I have to repeat this, but every kiddo is different. So sometimes 1 more minute, 2 more minutes, 3 more minutes, sometimes it depends on where your kiddo is feeling. Also, it depends on how much time is available. Sometimes, with kiddos that are trying to learn how to buckle their seat, they just need one more try, or maybe they need 2 more tries. That's completely fine. But when the fourth or fifth time comes, okay, we got to kind of speed this up. So we're going to be all done. It's going to be my turn. So it's creating a space that is open for conversation for context before the behavior occurs. One thing that we would like to point out is see something, say something. If you see that they're getting a little agitated, maybe sometimes narrating would help them feel like they're being heard, especially when you're trying to learn a new language. Of course, being heard is going to be often key to success. We also want to model calming strategies and self-advocacy skills. So of course, I need help, or I need help on your device is going to be often those core words that we often teach our kiddos, or even stop, or I don't like that. Especially when our kiddos are getting a little anxious, it's like, oh, I need to take a break. I need squeezes. A lot of our kiddos need squeezes to help them regulate their everyday language, not even their everyday language, but also regulate throughout their day. So in regards to ABA, other ways that we support speech is having our BCBA collaborate with speech. We also have virtual speech with an RBT facilitation. So in the case where your kiddo does receive ABA, a virtual speech is most definitely an option. It actually personally, it helps me as well. It creates more opportunities for learning experiences, as well as more opportunities for our kiddos to kind of gauge where we can include more opportunities for these speech activities. So please see your BCBA or speech therapist to see if you will be able to fit that into your schedule. Also, familiarizing yourself with PEC's protocol phases. They are very extensive. They are very important. And so meeting them where your kiddo is at is going to be key to success. You can always reach out to your speech therapist or your BCBA. And familiarizing yourself with PECs. We do and can offer parent trainings depending on your availability with your speech therapist as well. So another one is family involvement during ABA sessions. A lot of the time, sometimes it could be a little tricky trying to navigate your kiddo's AAC, or even tricky trying to get the specific model down. So if you have an RBT or a BCBA session, whenever your BCBA comes, you can always ask to, hey, could you check out how I'm doing, so that way I could teach my kiddo, see what I could do better, and have that feedback. And one more thing, time. Language and communication will take time. You don't learn it over a day. And as an adult, we are still learning how to communicate our wants and our needs with not only our significant others, but partners, friends, as well as parents. So time, and especially patience. Processing emotions often takes time and self-advocacy skills. All right.
Here we go. We are going to learn some signs. You may or may not know them. That is okay. We're gonna have time to practice. So I'll show you, I'll explain. At the end, we can practice if you want. You can ask questions if you're confused. This is being recorded, so you can pull it up and practice on your own. And there's other resources I'll be sharing at the end for ways you can further your knowledge about sign language. So we're gonna stop sharing the screen right now so you can see me large. There might be a way to pin me. Oh, you can go to view in your upper right hand corner. There's a little gritty button, has like 9 little squares. It says view. Click on that, and then you can press speaker, and you'll get whoever is on the mic. So if that is what you want to do to see me up close and personal, that is okay. Feel free to turn on your camera. You can come join us. I won't call you out. if I see something not right with your signs. We're just learning here. It's a friendly environment. So pop on if you would like. We are going to go over, so you won't see the slides, but you'll have them in the recording, kind of a list. But we're going to review some of those signs that your kid might have already learned from Bluebird. Okay, so we have more. I'm going to show you like a front view and a side view, and then you put them together and you tap. All right, so this is more. We talked about the prompting and the modeling, sometimes like a little elbow touch, you know, the kiddo will do that if you're showing them, or they know it, but they just need a little help getting there. Open, what we've done a lot at Bluebird is this. You hold your hands together and you open them out. I think of it like opening up a Ziploc bag, but this is also the sign for open. So having your hands together and opening forward. We talked a little bit about the baby sign versus the traditional sign, and how baby signs are super quick and simple and easy for like when the dexterity isn't totally there. So we do that a lot with our kids at Bluebird. But baby sign is not all known by everyone. I mean, neither is sign language. But if you're out and about and you do come across someone that knows sign language, the traditional sign generalizes better to like more communication partners. So we'll expose kiddos to both of those at Bluebird. We have go, it's like pointer fingers and you're pointing in whatever direction, go. So we have that when we're playing games and we're running, ready, set, go. Or if a kid wants to leave the room, it's like, oh, you're ready to go. We have help. Okay, that's the baby sign is patting your shoulders. The traditional sign is your non-dominant hand open and out, and then it's like a thumbs up sitting right on top. Okay, and so you lift that in an upward motion. And what's really cool about sign is the direction that you are doing a sign can give it a different message. So if I'm going up, but I'm going out, it's me saying, hey, I can help you. So it's going from me to somebody else. I can help you. But if you're saying like, hey, I need help, if I'm holding it out and bringing it towards me, it's like, oh, you help me. Right. So it changes the message a little bit, which is really cool when we're expanding on ideas. Eat is that same hand shape that you were using for more, but you're doing it at your lips. Right. So eat. We have my turn. It is a classic when we are playing games with our friends or saying like, hey, that's my turn, right? We're all done with what we're playing with. We're all done. It's my turn. And then I take it and put it away. So like I said, all of these words are only like not only for us to model for our children, but also it's for the receptive and expressive is what I'm trying to say. Getting my words a little jumbled. So, and then the last one from that kind of review is all done. So taking your hands and swiping them back and forth, all done, like clearing a table, all done. Okay, very good, friends. So you've seen some of those maybe with your kids, maybe they're new for the first time. Way to go. You've just learned 7 signs, 7 words. Okay, we're gonna work on some more action words, more core words. Very helpful in play and in instructing your child if you want them to do something. Another cool thing I like about sign is this. That's our little person, like our 2 fingers. And for some of our action words, we use our person to talk about what we're doing. So for our first action word, it's stand up. I'm gonna have my non-dominant hand open and just whoop, stand up. It's a good visual when we're lining up at the door. Stand up. Sit down, another good one. You're gonna take 2 fingers together. You're gonna tap over the top, right? So dominant hand on top of the non-dominant fingers. Okay. Sometimes too, the urgency or the speed in which you are doing something with your hands tells more of a message. So I'm like, oh, like, let's sit down, guys, let's sit down. versus like sit down now, right? You can see like it's a lot faster and harder. It kind of delivers the message in a different way. All right, we have walk. So you're gonna have L's. This is the L shape of your hand. No, wait, sorry. I don't know what's going on in my head. Oh, walk. I'm sorry. I was thinking of running. Walk. You're gonna have your hands like this. It's just like taking steps. Okay, we're just taking a step. Now we can do run. It's our L shapes. You're gonna kind of link here and squeeze. Running. Jumping, we get to pull out our person again. And the knees are bent on our person and they're jumping. And then stop. Stop is always a good one, especially for safety. Stop. Stop. So your dominant hand is going to be vertical with your non-dominant horizontal, coming down like that. All right. Next up, some family words. What I hear from some of my families is, hey, my kid doesn't call me anything, right? We haven't yet gotten to mom or dad, or we say, oh, how's baby sister? It's like, oh, they don't really interact that much, or he doesn't know her name yet. So we'll do a couple of family words. Something to note for family or for people, the male aspect of sign is up here, like your forehead, and then female is like your chin and your cheek. So when we do dad and mom, the sign, the hand shape is the same. So we have like our fingers spread apart, like giving a high five. You're gonna have your thumb touching your forehead and you do a couple taps. That's dad, right up at the top. And then mom is down at the bottom, right? So modeling that, like, oh, you wanna talk to mom? Here I am. And then let's see. Grandma, I love it when our kids have names for them, right? They don't want to feel left out. We have two ways we can say grandma and grandpa depending on how you think your child will best remember it. So it's the same hand shape, or it can be. We'll talk about that. But so say we want to do grandma, remember females at the chin. You start here and you like bounce it out twice, right? So you bounce it out. And then grandpa is the same at the top. But that could be kind of tricky if we're having a hard time moving it forward, right? Because then if the kid is just here and not going anywhere, then they're just saying dad for grandpa, and that could get a little confusing. So if we want to shake it up and you think your kid would best benefit from that, we can take a C-shaped hand and you're gonna turn it sideways with the thumb at the forehead for the male and at the bottom for female. And then you could bounce that. Or, I mean, if it's not moving, right? Like if they're not moving it, then at least that is differentiated from this for grandpa, right? So grandpa and then grandma. Cool. And then we have brother and sister for our siblings. Again, males up here, females down here. We're going to have little L's, and you'll take like brother up here and come down on top. And then sister is from the chin. So I'll do it this way too so you can see. Okay, those are some family signs. Just a little bit more to go. Hang in there. You guys are doing a great job. We have pronouns. It's great for teaching autonomy, asking for a turn, telling someone, no, hey, that's mine, standing up for yourself, offering something to somebody else when we get to sharing and collaborating in your child's skill set. I is super easy. Just point to yourself. And then what's really cool about pronouns and possessives is it's just a different hand shape. So you're pointing at yourself. And then like mine is tapping your chest, which is the same as saying like my turn. Okay. So if I wanted to say you, I'm going to point directly at the person that I'm referring to. And if I'm telling you, oh, it's yours, my hand is going to be open towards the person that I'm talking to. Okay, he and she is just pointing directly at the person if I'm talking to them. If we're not really sure, like if my friend Becky isn't sitting next to me while I'm talking to Sally and I'm pointing, like that's obviously she. Then you can do the boy-girl sign. So it's like a baseball cap they do. And then down the cheek for the girl, it's like a bonnet strap, right? So we're really dating sign language back to when it was started. So you could say he and point to the generic person you're referring to that's not right there, or she to the girl that's not present at the time. And then we were just like tapping ourselves twice. And then for hours, you're like rotating when you're pointing, like referring to multiple people in our collective group. Okay, cool for pronouns to teach autonomy. Food is next. We couldn't do a presentation without food. That's so highly motivating to me and to our children. Okay, we love to work for food. We did eat. We'll review that one. Right, our pinched fingers to our mouth and you tap. Drink, so easy. It's like you're tipping a cup back. Okay, we got drink. Some specific food words, like we said, as we get into the specific nouns, like apple, that's way more child specific. Not everyone likes apples. A lot of our kids love fruit. And so we can be more generic instead of teaching like 10 specific fruits and getting like the specific one for each kid. This is the F letter. And so you take that at the corner of your mouth and you just twist. So that's for fruit. Cookies. I have yet to meet a large amount of children that do not like cookies. So we can do cookie, our non-dominant hand open, our C shape, right? C for cookie. And you're gonna put it in your hand and then rotate it. Cookie. Taught that one to a girl today, caught on second try. She was like saying and signing cookie. And then water. I'm using my other hand. Water, it's the W shape at your lips. Water. Cool. Those are all of our word signs. And we have 3 more signs. And then I promise we will be done. Your mind might be overflowing with all that you've learned tonight. But places, right? If we're trying to prepare a kid to go somewhere, it's helpful for them to know where they're going. Maybe they're not catching on to the words that you're saying, so you can show them. Or if they want to go somewhere, but you have no idea, the sign might help give them a way to tell you. So we're just going to do 3. We're going to do home, school, and car. Right? Car, you're just pretending like you're moving the steering wheel. Right? In the car, driving along. School is school. It's the clap. Okay. And then home is, you're going to take, this is like a great hand shape to know. The pinch, you're going to go from your cheek to your ear. So it's like from eating and then like the sleeping area, right? Eat to sleep, right? That's what we like to do at home. So home. All right. I will share some resources with you guys quickly if we can reshare the screen, and then we'll have time for questions. Let's see. I'm really proud of you guys. That is like a full day in a course. It's amazing. You learned it in like 10 minutes. Okay. And I see there's a question in the chat, so we definitely will get to that. If you have questions that are on your mind right now, you can write them in, or in a bit we can have you like unmute yourself and ask you. So here's some good resources. You do not have to like attend a university class to learn sign language. There's tons of free resources. Gotta love the free things. These are 2 great Instagram accounts, many more. You just go in your search bar and type it in. You'll find so many. Maybe you'll like someone's teaching style better than the other, but we have Sign Language 101 and Signed with Heart. Really great resources there. Plus super easy, like on your lunch break, you pull up your Instagram account and you watch the 2-minute video that shows you all the signs related to coffee. Probably not related for your child though, as we don't caffeinate the children, but etc. Like holiday words are fun too. All right, next we have links, which I can also like send out a follow-up email or something. But these are like 6 free ways to practice and then 16 free ways to practice online. Lots of Paid places also provide a free, smaller version as well. Also, you have our contact information now. If you have questions for us, all of that's there. And then, of course, our citations. If you have any questions about any of the places we've gotten our information. But we'll go ahead and we'll stop sharing the screen and we'll answer some questions. Yes, Crystal, we will send the links to you. Absolutely. And absolutely. I'm glad you enjoyed learning as well. Yes, Megan, this is the sign we use for potty. It's the sign T and you shake it. So it's like, oh, you got to go potty. That's a really good one to get the kids started. Yes, I see. Colleen, you have your hand raised.
Oh, yes. I would also like to receive, so maybe if you can send it to all the attendees,
Yeah, absolutely.
just so we can practice. What is the word for want? Like they want something.
Good question. Holding your hands out in front of you and then pulling in is want.
Okay. And I'm assuming you say this as you're doing it, right? Because you want them, some kiddos may never have that, the speech part, but some may. And so I'm assuming you're always trying to encourage that piece. So like you're doing like walk when you're saying walk or.
Yes.
Okay.
That's at least the direction I take when I do that. Mm-hmm.
And that's like a really good example of like what is like the total communication piece. You can say it and you can do it. And then now they have two ways that they can ask for walk if they want to say it or sign it or whatever way they want to.
Awesome. What is I don't know, I want to say the take, or what is your opinion of, he has a talker and we use that, but it's a lot easier when he's more sitting. And I can see a lot of these being good in the wild, as I will say it, like at the park, like stop or whatever. But what's the take for you guys?
Absolutely.
Should we be doing more sign language? Should we try keeping with the talk? Like, what are your thoughts on how to mix those things, combine them, whatever? And by the way, talker is the thing for like that. That's what we call it. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think a lot of us call it a talker.
Yeah.
I think the point of view on that, it varies, I guess, depending on your speech pathologist. But what I like to do is I honor all sorts of communication. So, if I'm trying to teach a new skill using a high-tech device or a talker, then I might, like, if the kid signs it to me, like, okay, yes, but can you show me on your talker? Just so I know they have that skill down. But I love sign and other ways, because what happens if the talker breaks or has to go for repairs or the charger dies and you're out and about, right? So having multiple ways for a kiddo to communicate. So I like it in the wild, right? That's so funny. But having something to use out there for sure. I see the sign for upset or pain. I am not super sure, but I can get back to you on that and send that one specifically to you.
Just to add on also for your question, Colleen, about like the use of your device or sign, I think that's also why like a lot of our kids like benefit from having therapy in general, is that we get to practice it in those very specific and very highly structured contexts, so then they can go use it in the wild. So honor whatever works for them best in that moment, and then we'll do our best to get them to use whatever they're using in that time as well.
So it's kind of whatever they can communicate with is best, right? If it's talker, if it's sign, just communications is king, really.
Communication is key. And I'd say, like, as far as generalizing or being most understood by the greatest amount of communication partners, if you're using a talker and it's speaking a message, that will be way more understood than if your child is signing to a stranger who has no idea what in the world ASL is, right? So like keeping that in mind too. I do know, Yvonne, for questions about pain, facial expressions are everything in sign language, right? Like you could do the same sign, but then your facial expression either tells you you're happy about it or sad about it, not sure about it, and then pointing to an area. So making like a sick or a sad face and then pointing to that area and seeing if a kiddo like reciprocates that same thing and understands the message, kind of like going back and forth with that. Any other questions, you guys, or any signs you missed that you want to go over quickly before our time is up? We won't do like any new signs anymore, just because I am definitely not an expert. So I won't necessarily be able to pull them out on the spot.
I have another question. I'm sorry. I am
That's
talking
totally fine.
talkerson. Apologies, everyone. Don't mean to dominate. Do you have like a sorry, you can actually hear my husband in the background asking about these things we're talking about, and he's probably doing this. Do you have like a cheat sheet of these that you guys use that we can use as parents? Don't want to make any extra work, but it'd be really cool just to have reminders, pictures, that you guys typically use at Bluebird, for example, like help there versus other things. If not, no worries, but it might be helpful.
No, I agree. I'm not sure of any visuals or handouts we have. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's
Hey,
a great
Abby.
idea. Yeah, Grace.
This is Grace Kerrigan. I'm just going to interrupt
Hi,
for
Grace.
just one sec because we do have some resources that we can direct you to. We have so many, so it's hard to keep track of what we have, but we do have a couple YouTube videos up on our YouTube with therapists providing signs and also a couple written documents. And we can share that with y'all as well after this. In addition to this lovely presentation, which will be shared.
And another way too is also reaching out to your speech therapist for your kiddo specific ones. I know that especially when it comes to mixed communication and that total communication, your speech therapist and if you have ABA, I'm not quite sure, they will have probably a ton of more resources. You can also check out our blog on Bluebird as well. I know we do have a couple of blog posts on ASL and more of those resources as well.
Thank you.
Mhm. Ruby, I am not super familiar with that, but I will check out that resource and see what it's all about. Be a good one.
As for this presentation in general, it would also be on YouTube. So you could look up Bluebird Day and it has all of our Beyond the Nest series presentations over there.
Revocation.
Sorry, that was me pulling up the link that was recommended in there, and it decided to give it a go. All right. Yes.
Oh, and Evie said that she will send this recording to everyone who's attending as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The baby sign for help. Yes, it's fun. There's a different like website for baby sign too, if you ever want to check it out for some of the simpler signs. It's very fun. One thing too, we talked about approximations just before we stop, but for some signs that are harder, or even some of like the signs we consider very simple for more, some of my kids go like this, but it's consistent across the board. So it's not one day this, one day something other. It's a consistent sign that they use that we recognize as more and then honor that as well. But I still sign back this, but I accept their more. All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much for attending. I'm glad that some of you found this helpful. You'll have our contact information if you have any other questions, and like the recording, all the other resources that we provided at the end of the presentation. So I'm really glad that we got to do this, and I'm glad you guys decided to invest your time in learning more. Yes, you're welcome, you guys. Thank you so much.
You.
Bye.